Right, so I'd like to call to order the August 21st meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education. In front of you, you have the minutes from the July 17th board meeting. If I could have you take a look at that, and if I could get a motion to approve those minutes. Sherry, second. Oh, Penny, thank you. All those in favor? Okay, those are approved. Moving on to review and approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I have one small change on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
And it's simply the addition of the consent agenda. The agenda that was posted on Friday didn't have the consent agenda items because we were anticipating receipt of a letter of resignation, and we received that, so we added this consent agenda in tonight.
Okay, so could I get a motion to approve the amendment? Penny, second. Hazel, all those in favor? And then could I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Sherry, second. Jen, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on to comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Do I have anyone who wishes to address the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports and recognition. And we have a school enrollment report with Mr. Cass.
Thank you so much. So at your places are the enrollment projections, 2 sheets. The first one, the one with the colors, has the district enrollment numbers, and these are current as of today. So just wanted to point out the enrollments are listed there in black. To the right are the NASDAQ projections. Now, if you remember back to last November when we received the projections for this school year, so fascinating to see. If you look at the K-12 total enrollment, 4,247 students. The projection was 4 students less. And across the board, it looks like we are right on our projections again. And this has been pretty consistent over the years, very close in terms of projections. The second sheet I wanted to share with you are some of the elementary school enrollments and class sizes. So if you switch over to that one, we have listed the number of sections across the board. At East, 28 sections, South up to 29, West at 24, plus the 3 sections of pre-K. You see our numbers, and we listed the average class sizes across the district. And these are numbers as of today. If school started tomorrow, looks like every single section, again, at the elementary level would be within the board guidelines. So I'm pleased to report that as well. You know, we've been monitoring the enrollment very closely over the summer, meeting weekly, just to try to keep track of who's moving in, who's moving out. And we have made some changes to our original staffing. So we ended up adding teachers to achieve these class size numbers. You know, back in May 31st, for example, we added a kindergarten section at East School. In July, we added 3 sections. We added a 4th grade at East, a 2nd and a 3rd grade at South School, and just recently, at the end of July, we added a kindergarten at South. So we have added those sections. We are still 2 full teachers below at the elementary level from last year. Just an interesting point. So we are in really wonderful shape in terms of class size, in terms of our enrollment, and the other piece I wanted to be able to just share quickly, knowing that tomorrow is a very exciting day in the district with our new teacher induction tomorrow morning. So I wanted just to quickly review with you the hires over the course of this season of hiring, and clearly it's been another very productive year. We are ready to start school without any teacher vacancies, administrator vacancies. We are completely fully staffed, maybe with the exception of some other positions like teacher assistants. But hires to date, we hired the new Canaan High School assistant principal, one administrator. We hired a new director of food services, and she has already started in the district. We hired 25 teachers. 25 is our number this year, 7 at the elementary level, 6 at the middle school level, 11 at the high school level, and 1 dedicated to the system. So 25 teachers will be here tomorrow. We're really excited to see them. In addition to the 25 teachers, we hired 18 non-certified staff, including nurses, TAs, a network technician, custodian, an ACES supervisor here at the high school. And in addition to that, 8 interns. Total number of new staff to date, as of today, 53 new staff members joining the New Canaan Public Schools. So very pleased to tell you that, and very proud of the great work our administrators did. You know, they do all the hiring. School administrators, they spend an inordinate amount of time choosing the best candidates, and they're very clear about that we're looking for the best candidates for our school district. That's all I have for you, unless you have any questions.
So, thank you, Gary. In addition to the administrative staff and everyone for the amazing job of hiring 53 new staff members in a year, so thank you very much. Penny?
I was just curious, in terms of teachers, what remain the hardest positions to fill? I know, where are the shortages in the area?
So the shortage areas fall into the area of the library media position, our tech integrator position, very challenging area to hire. Anyone that teaches world language or the sciences or math. I hear from my colleagues just in a neighboring district, they have 3 openings for math teachers, have 0 candidates. So this year we did hire 2 world language teachers, an earth science teacher, a chemistry teacher, also a Spanish teacher, library media. So all of our vacancies happen to be in shortage areas. At the middle school, we did hire a full-time math teacher. We're very lucky to have such a terrific candidate there. Special ed, also a category that is an amazing shortage. We needed to hire 4 special education teachers at the high school level, which we accomplished, a speech and language teacher. We had a speech and language pathologist also hire at the middle school, sped teacher at the middle school, 2 psychologists we hired this year, also a shortage area, occupational therapists, classroom teachers, not a shortage area, but interestingly, we had an early vacancy last week of a long-term sub. And the principal reported to me that districts are snapping up elementary teachers at an amazing rate. They're getting jobs, and many districts are sitting with vacancies as we speak now. So consider us really fortunate to be able to have started the process early and have hired an amazing group of talented educators.
Sherry?
Well, first of all, Gary, congratulations. congratulations on the 53 new hires. And it's very
Thank you.
exciting to see at the elementary level that all the grades are within the class size guidelines, so that's good news. My question, I always follow that one bubble grade, which is the rising freshman class. And I'm just wondering, and I guess for Brian or Gary, whoever wants to answer, if that class moving into the high school, if there's any pressure points there, whether it be, I don't know, the earth science, bio selections or the math selections, or if there are any pressure points as that particular bubble grade moves to the high school.
Sure. So as you likely recall, when we developed the budget last year, we did include in the budget .2 across each of the curriculum areas for the size, for that bubble grade. So that .2 plus some reshuffling of different FTEs, so to speak, so courses that teachers are teaching, I think we're in good shape. I've taken a look with Bill Egan through the class sizes and the scheduling and how it's all flowing, and it looks like things are well balanced. We did have a few late resignations at the high school that just came through this past week. So we've been reshuffling again as we work on it all. But Bill and his team have been very creative problem solvers over there. And I think that the .2 has really helped. Without that, we would have been in big trouble.
Right.
Because then you would be seeing class sizes really creeping up. And what happens when the class sizes are large like that, it drives the rest of the schedule in high school because one course builds on the next and the students' availability. So being able to avoid that, I think, helps to flow into some of the elective areas as well.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? I just had, a comment and a question. I'm very impressed with the demographers' ability to be so close. I mean, we're 4 over their projection, so that's pretty impressive. I am seeing more of a shift this year than I've seen, in grades that we traditionally can predict. Usually I see the big, variance in sort of kindergarten. And so I guess my question is, what are you seeing with this 3rd grade class? I mean, are we having move-outs? And then again, with the 8th and the 11th grade? Because those are big shifts in those grades, and I'm not quite sure, I mean, were you able to get any, color on sort of what's happening with those grades?
Well, we did kind of achieve our numbers in kindergarten, just over the projection, and from past reports, we had been worried about whether we would achieve that number, which we did. 3rd grade, it was a matter of move-outs. It's really, really unusual, but down 22 students from projection. But interestingly, last year, this time, that grade was at 315, and now at 329. The other grades that you mentioned, which ones?
The 8th, sometimes I have to look at, I can't really look at your, oh wait, yeah, I can. Okay, so so if I look, I guess it isn't such a big shift if I look at 2016.
Yeah.
It's just year over year, it's a big shift, but
Right.
you're right. If I look at 2000, but yeah.
Right, so if you're looking at the 3rd grade at the
Right.
329,
Right.
that was last year's 2nd grade.
Right.
And they were at 338.
Yep,
Right, so we haven't dropped 22 students.
it's just year over year.
But we just didn't have the influx as we
Right.
generally do according to the projection. So the projection had us going up from 338 to 351. What actually happened was we went from 338 to 329, so we did lose a few students. But it's just we
Yep.
didn't pick up as many as the projection had.
Right.
That can also we can hypothesize perhaps people moving in have students who are different ages, and maybe that they had some younger kids or what have you that helped in some of those other grades, or
Right.
change the numbers in those other grades. So
Yeah.
we don't know exactly, but that's the challenge when you're looking at last year's 2nd grade, this year's
Right.
3rd grade, and then
Right.
the projections sort of had
Right,
factored
so
in
like
this.
we're up in the senior class by 8 kids, year over year.
Right, we've gone from 308 in the junior class last year to this year's senior class is 316.
Right.
Exactly.
That's a big shift in a senior class.
Absolutely.
I mean,
For sure.
Yeah, okay. All right. Penny?
So I was just curious, I couldn't remember, for our projection for kindergarten, which is always the riskiest, we were spot on. In fact, we're 4 over.
Yes.
And that's the one where we've been applying the higher multiplier over births from 5 years ago.
Yes.
Because we've had so many move-ins. Do you
That is
remember?
correct. Yes, this is
So
all.
that
the-
actually is,
this
that's sort of in a way, it's almost the riskiest. And they were, I just was wondering if you had any comments on it. I mean,
It
it's-
was the move-ins again, and that's been the pattern that we've experienced in our district probably for the last 5 years or so.
So it's
it's-
continuing.
It's continuing.
Right. And that is an important observation, Penny, so thank you for looking at that kindergarten, because even just this year, we were concerned about that number a little bit, only because it was below projection. You know, as Gary and I talk about this, there's sort of, no matter what the story around enrollment, it's good or bad news, depending on how you look at it. But for us, it's always good news if it's on or very close to projections, because then we've planned for it. And so when we look at a number like that at the 277 for kindergarten, where the projection was 273, it's pretty spot on to where we were planning and what we thought. And as we look at those, that's generally what we see, despite, again, that third grade change is a little different. But when we look at the overalls, you know, the fact that on October 1st of 2016, we had 4,246 students. And this year, just now today, we have 4,247 students. So we've been using the phrase stable, consistent enrollment, and we're 1 student off from where we were last year. So I think that stability there is showing, and that's what we've seen. Now, I've spoken to a couple of people about this. When we reported out in June, you know, we reported right at the end of the school year, which was where you report the move outs, the people who now have finished the year, they'll come in and withdraw, and they're moving, and they know that they're moving. But we haven't yet taken in the new folks who have moved in over the summertime. So that's why we look at it every single week. And I do want to commend Jill and Gary and the principals they met every single week throughout the summer. If they couldn't be there, if they were on a trip or on vacation, they phoned in to be a part of it and really looked very carefully at these numbers. And I was getting a little nervous even just 2 weeks ago that we had to make a decision about the South Kindergarten, and we want to make sure we can hire the best people. So we made that decision, you know, and it's a little bit late for us, but that's how we try to manage these numbers and to work it all through. I also want to say, and Gary was very humble in giving the credit to the principals and the administration, and that's correct. However, Gary and his team meet with every single one of our new staff members. And where in some districts, folks go to that final interview and they do it on their way to go out with their friends and they're wearing shorts and t-shirts, we tell folks here, no, this is an interview. Mr. Cass is going to interview you as you come through, and he makes the final decision. And the HR department makes the final decision. So it's not just a meet and greet, it's an interview, it's in asking important questions, and really learning about our candidates. And so I want to commend Gary and his whole team, you know, for everything that they do over the summer, because they are working hard night and day to pull this together and to get the best candidates that we can get. So
Thank you so
Gary.
much.
Again, just very quickly, because I do think it's just worth looking at and spending just another minute on. The enrollment projection for the middle school last year was 1,339 for this year. And at this point, we're at 1,345. So we are 6 above the projections that we had. And then at the high school, again, it was 1,309 projected, and right now we're at 1,327. So the projections overall are within 4 students. We've been able to work through any sort of fluctuation that we've had to, thanks to the good work of the administration and the HR team and everybody else involved. But when we say they do a pretty good job, I think here's some evidence that they do a pretty good job. Now, I will tell you that this afternoon at about 3:45 or so, Laura Walsh, our district registrar, as I was walking past, grabbed me and said, "We had another family register today." So these numbers are going to change a little bit, as they do. We've got a week and a half. You know, but in this week and a half, if it changes in any direction, it probably would be upward, because we do, I think, know about the withdrawals. But we'll keep you posted. But looking at the other sheet, we do feel that our staffing model is correct, And we have, as you know, we have the team model over at SAC, so we can absorb some fluctuation there. We have our staffing at the high school and the scheduling and sort of making that work. And then we look across our elementaries, and again, thanks to the good work from the entire summer, I feel like we're in a very good place to absorb a little fluctuation if we must.
And so I guess, is it fair to say we're still bucking the state trend of what's happening in sort of surrounding districts with, enrollment
To some
declines?
degree, although when I
Okay.
speak with some of my colleagues, and I have recently about this, they share with me that they're also above projections. So they had some gloom and doom projections in some towns just around us, and they're telling me that they've come in higher than they were projected to come in, and they've had to hire some new staff as a result. So I think that we might be seeing a shift in the overall trend. It takes some time to do that. For us, again, I would say that we're consistent. We're staying stable and consistent with our enrollment. And we'll be, as we always do after October 1st, handing these numbers off to the demographer, and they'll look at the historical numbers, they'll look at this year's numbers, and they'll regenerate those reports for us so that we'll have another set of enrollment projections for, believe it or not, the 18-19 school year. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Penny?
I guess the only question I had relates really to the teachers and the hiring and really to the consent agenda, which is, you had mentioned that there were 4 high school teachers. So that is sort of an unusually high number between July and August. And I know I went to a lecture once where a mathematician told me that probability is clumpy. This could just be a clump. Is there anything that, it included the chair of the science department at the high schools. Is there, should we be changing our procedures so that we know earlier, or were you?
Well, it's very hard to know, in that particular case, very often in the hiring of administrators, it happens a little bit later in the season. It's not that, we have teachers, I don't know, probably somewhere around 25 or so that hold certification to become a school administrator. So some are actively looking, and you just never know when they land a position. In this case, it happened to be pretty late. So we did have to do some scrambling, because it's very hard to hire a science teacher a week before school starts when there are no candidates. So, but we have a plan, and we will work it through. But a few of those certainly were unexpected resignations.
Okay. Well, thanks for your flexibility.
And just specifically for those two, those resignations at the high school, I do want to again commend Bill Egan and his whole team, who worked to put together plans that really work very well for the kids. So we're making sure we're still we've got great teachers teaching those classes and making it all work. So to their credit, they problem solved on the fly and did a wonderful job, and
Okay, great.
they should be thanked. Yes.
Okay, anyone else? All right. Moving on to the action items. The first item under action items is the district goals first read. And maybe, Dr. Alexia, you can talk about those before I ask for a. I know,
However you'd like to
I
do
like
it.
to throw it.
Absolutely. And I will be recruiting some help from Dr. Krenti and any others who would like to join in. But as you know, each year we look at and revise our district goals. The district goals guide our work really from the superintendent's office right down into the classroom level. Something I think we do very well as a district is the consistent focus that we have on our 5 district goals, and all of us can sort of reel off what they are with teaching and learning and communications and TEPL, professional practice. We have a school climate goal, and then stewardship. So we know what those things are, and those are sort of the big ideas. The real work is in the objectives underneath them, and it's the objectives that help us to set those targets that we work towards as a district in order to continuously improve on behalf of our students and the work that we do. The administrative team has taken a look at the objectives from the 15-16 and 16-17 and revised them as we go into the 17-18. And you'll see that you have two packets. One is a clean copy and the other is sort of the marked up copy. And it's on the marked up copy that you can see some of the differences in language. And if something last year was about researching, well, then this year, if we're in the right place, we go into designing a plan and possibly implementing. So there's a continuum of language and practice in this around these objectives. And there are some new objectives that are other priorities that have surfaced in the last year that we feel are important things for us to be working on. So it's a guide for us in our practice as we're doing things. It helps us to be sure that every step we take is in alignment with the vision and the goals of the district. And it's also, as you know, there's an accountability piece, right? So as we talk about, at the end of the year, we talk about progress as a district, I'm often referring to these goals. As we go through the course of the year, different curricular presentations and other presentations that come before the board will flow from these goals as we have these and the objectives within those goals. So you'll see that some of them, again, have changed pretty markedly. Some of them are very similar to what they were in the past because that is just work that continues and it's best practice to continue doing that work. So as we begin looking at it, you'll see the very first goal. And again, this is for a first read tonight and at the board's next meeting, I think it's September 5th, is it? Okay, the Tuesday after Labor Day. We'll look for a second read and a vote on this. So the first goal, and again, it's not indicating priority either, although I think it is for goal 1, because our goal 1 is our student learning goal. And again, the goal remains consistent around increasing student learning as measured by multiple and varied assessments to assure all students graduate prepared for a dynamic and complex global society. The first objective remains the same. And that objective is focused on curriculum instruction and assessment, which is, of course, the instructional core. It's the core of our work, and the exchange between teacher, student, and content that matters the most. And it's about our work in continuously looking at that curriculum instruction assessment, updating it, aligning it with best practices and best things to do.
And I think what's most important here is we've really begun to make great gains in this area, especially in our middle school. One of the areas that we focused on a lot last year was putting in some common assessments across the core academic areas and then bringing them together for data teams to talk about those assessments. And you might recall some of that presentation from RTI, Response to Intervention. I mentioned those data teams that come together, look at those common assessments in English language arts, in mathematics, in science and social studies, and it really gives the coordinators as well as those teachers a really in-depth conversation about how their students are performing and what their next steps are for their students in regards to differentiation of instruction. It also gives them a great look at the curriculum to make sure that there's no inconsistencies with that curriculum and allows them to keep moving forward. As we move into this school year, we will be faced with the next generation science assessment. This year there will be a pilot similar to what we did for Smarter Balance several years ago. So this year will be a pilot for grades 5, 8, and 11. The next generation science assessment will be moving into 11th grade opposed to 10th grade where the CAPT used to sit. Although there will be no scores reported on the pilot, our participation rate will be important, and certainly we learned a lot when we gave the pilot for the Smarter Balance, and we'll learn from this pilot as well. So I think we'll be in a good place there, but certainly that higher level of thinking, those performance-based assessments, and I think we are really beginning to see great gains in what we're doing, and we just need to keep moving forward with all that work that they're revising the curriculum and those assessments and having that conversation with the teachers and that ongoing work.
Yeah.
And is it easier to take questions along the way, or is it easier to stop after
Good
each
question. I was
goal?
thinking each goal, we could
Okay.
stop and pause and reflect on that goal and the objectives. This way, you sort of have the totality of the objectives under each one, if that's all right.
Perfect. Yep. Great.
If that's all right.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay. So our next objective under this goal 1 is for all students to meet the graduation standards. And as you recall, that we've been talking about and doing some work on the graduation standards over the last couple of years. And turns out that, once again, the legislature has changed their expectations for graduation standards. And they've really gone to a different model, where in the past it was more prescriptive, where students must take certain classes and so many credits in each of the subject areas. Now they've really loosened it up to say it's give a number of credits in the STEM area, a number of credits in the humanities area. And so it's now no longer 4 in English, 4 in social studies, 3 in this, whatever it was. So they've really changed. So I'm in part glad, or at least somewhat glad, we hadn't brought a recommendation to the board last year, because it would have to then change as we look at where this is going. They have it for the class of 2023 at this point, but in the objectives area, put it in for the class of 2022, which is the incoming 8th grade. So they would be next year's freshmen, because I think we know enough now for the group at the high school to take a look and learn about the expectations from the state, and then look at what our students currently are doing. You know, we have such a high percentage of students who are so far exceeding the graduation requirements that we currently have, that I think when we look at what the state's requirements are, we look at where our students are, we can come up with a set of credit expectations for every student that really helps to move the program forward a bit and helps to ensure that every student's graduating with that rich experience that we want them to have. A new one here is C, which is something that we've had some conversation about, and it's something that we'll be spending some time and resources on this year, which is to research and make recommendations regarding school start times in alignment with best practice focused on meeting student needs. We're beginning to look at this. Some schools around us, as you know, Wilton has had a later start time for a period of years. Newtown upstate is changing their start time by a few minutes going into next year. Some other communities, Ridgefield is looking at it as well. So I think it's a good time for us to take a look. We don't know what the recommendations will be, and we may recommend to keep things exactly the way they are. We may recommend to make some changes. As you know, thinking about school start times, there are many variables that go into that. Transportation being a significant one. Greenwich is adjusting its start time this year, and they're doing so at a pretty significant cost. So we want to look at the models that are out there, look at those that have changed their start time, and see if it's had their purported positive influence on their student body as a result of doing that. We want to look at those that are recently doing it, see some of the challenges, struggles they've had, and the solutions that they've applied to the question, and see if there's a good fit for us or not here in New Canaan. Of course, one of the challenges is there a problem that you're solving for? Not really. When I speak to students and teachers and others and parents, we're at a good place, but if we can make some changes and make things better and do it in a way where the benefit far outweighs the cost, then it's certainly worth taking a look at. So one of our objectives this year is to do some research around that, talk to folks, get a group together, and then to make some recommendations to the board. Jill, would you like to talk about that?
Sure. So the next objective is really talking about STEM, which is our science, technology, engineering, and math. And what we really want to make sure that we continue is the innovation with how we're integrating STEM in grades K through 8. It's amazing the growth that occurs each year and the new ideas that come right from the grassroots from those teachers, and that might include the Shark Tank that existed as part of the STEM block in 7th grade last year. What we are noticing is the increase in the courses that we're offering up at the high school. Because we've started this initiative K-8, last year we had to open up a web design, gaming, 3D animation, all elective courses that are sitting within computer technology engineering. And this year we'll be opening interior design as another option for students. And we are finding that those courses fill up rapidly, and they're very exciting for the students to engage in that and kind of continue on with the next steps of the learning that took place at the middle school and the elementary school. So it's very exciting. As we move into the next generation science standards, we are going to begin to roll out units of study in grades K through 8. We've worked very hard at looking at the current curriculum, looking at the next generation science standards and making adjustments accordingly. And so we are ready to start rolling out some of those units. And as we're rolling those out, we get feedback from the teachers and we go back and we redesign. So it's just a living curriculum document that continues to take place. Really where our work this year will be on that research and design plan for grades 9 through 12. So it's really taking a look at where do those science standards fit into the content areas? Where do they fit in through biology and chemistry? And so that will be a big step of what they'll be doing this year. As we move into Objective 4, we're looking at the health curriculum. So as you remember last year, we had Jonathan Adams and Jay Egan come and do a presentation for all of you in regards to where we are and what we see as our next steps. And certainly this year, what we're really planning on doing is trying to divide this into probably like a 3-year phase is the way I would be looking at it with the administrative team, really taking a look closely at K through 4, which is where we identified many of the gap areas. So trying to map out what the curriculum would look like in K through 4, and then take a look at it in 5 through 8, and then where we have the most robust curriculum is in that 9 through 12. So it's really trying to look at the vertical look, but to divide the work apart so that it's not so overwhelming and that we're doing it in a meaningful way for both students and teachers. We also want to be thoughtful with how we go about scheduling that for the future, not taking away from PE at the elementary level, but trying to figure out how that all balances out in an elementary schedule and making sure that we can fit those needs. So we have to be creative in looking at those best practices as we move forward. And then it's really important to continue to communicate with the parents and communicate with the public on where we are in this curriculum and where we're seeing the growth. So we're hoping to get a great curriculum in place and begin rolling that out a year from now. I would predict that we would have some items for budget in the fall that we would want to talk about to try to figure out what our next steps are as we move forward.
As we get into 5, we talk about the technological skills and knowledge for our students as they work their way through the grades. Focus, of course, on professional learning, and really a very powerful professional learning has evolved through the years, really in many schools, where those folks who used to be called the pioneers now are the leaders, and they are really there's lots of homegrown opportunities for professional learning. We're going to continue providing those opportunities for staff, but now so much more, it's no longer bringing in that speaker who knows how to do something, who then teaches everybody how to do it. It's really canvassing your staff and having those leaders step up and running different sort of in real-time workshops. As you remember, Jonathan Costa years ago talked about instead of just-in-case learning, it's just-in-time learning. So now our teachers are experiencing that as well. I want to do this, and then they match up with somebody who's already doing it. They learn it, and then the next day they're applying it and doing that work. So really powerful stuff. As you recall from the budget, we are bringing some new technology into SACs as well as we prepare to open. We have in the humanities classrooms and the others a very rich technological environment for them. So again, it's no longer the model of signing out a cart of computers to use next Tuesday and then shaping your instructions so that on Tuesday you're going to do something technology rich. Now it's building it into your practice, into your instruction authentically, and you have it there in real time. So I just said to somebody today, we used to have a whole herd of cows, computers on wheels, and we have thinned the herd substantially. Many fewer carts going back and forth, and now the teachers have full-time, real-time access to the technology to help their instruction and certainly the students' learning. We are looking, of course, implementing best practices around library media and scheduling, and continuing to develop our model of learning commons across the 5 buildings in our library space. Libraries are no longer successful when they're quiet spaces. We want them to be learning commons, places where people come together to collaboratively learn, to work together, to develop, to create, and so we're really working to build that model. And then finally, and you see the others, but the last one is a new one, focused on learning management system, and by the end of the year, or certainly around budget time, we hope to and intend to, because hope is not a strategy, we intend to recommend a learning management system which will serve to enhance communications, enrich the learning experience for all students, and have a plan to begin implementation of that in 2018-19. So that will be part of the budget piece as well. We've done some research. We want to finalize that research and be able to bring forward a proposal for the board.
The
is
next
RTI.
objective is with response to intervention. So certainly we want to continue with all the work that we've begun in response to intervention. And probably the two areas that you'll see a big change is really G and H, where we really spent some time taking a look at the elementary report card. So one of the areas that we talked about is how do you track students behaviorally, socially, and emotionally when we talked about that response to intervention. And one of the area on the elementary report cards is that habits of success. So what we spent some time this summer doing was working with some classroom teachers, K through 5, as well as Susan Bliss, and really taking a look at our SAPL framework and really trying to align our SAPL framework with those indicators on the elementary report card. So we've divided it into 3 different areas, which is the self-awareness and management, the social awareness and interpersonal skills, and the decision-making and problem-solving. And some of the indicators will be the same under those areas, certainly following written and oral directions under self-awareness and management, and completing work carefully and keeping materials organized. Those are things that have always been there, but it's really just putting it into those broad categories. Some areas we've really expanded on. And it's really putting them into that so that the teachers are all talking that common language. What was most fascinating was having a conversation with the 5th grade teachers during the summer, and they felt that it was really important to make sure that those indicators went K-5. So the indicators went kindergarten, which would make logical sense because that's an introductory year and kids are just starting in school, and then we had them designed for grades 1 through 4, and then they changed when they hit 5th grade. And so the 5th grade teacher said, well, that's kind of hard to track how kids are doing towards these indicators of success when you're shifting them in 5th grade. So we came together, and now we have the same indicators for grades 1 through 5, but they might be defined differently, and the teachers have really worked hard on how to define that. And so they'll be rolling that out on PL Day in August to all the other classroom teachers, and then talking a little bit about it at open house for parents as well. The other area is in relationship to the new ELL coordinator that we hired. And so we thought it was really important to make sure that we monitor and support our district-wide EL program. And certainly that does fall under response to intervention. So as we're working with children who are learning English as a second language, it is creating action plans, and it's determining what's the best way that these students will learn, and how do we integrate not only learning a new language, but also content. The next objective is really in world language. And we realized that the end of the year is when all of the world language data comes in, when all of the testing is done. And so we didn't have the results by the end of the school year on how the students had performed on the ACTFL and some of the other assessments that they take. So we are going to ask Lizette D'Amico to come and do a presentation in September to give you an update and progress towards this objective in particular, and talk a little bit about whether we think we need to tweak anything. Right now, she is very excited about the students at level 5 and the amount of students that are moving on and taking language at level 5. It's really grown over the last couple years, so she's very excited about that. And there's also a new legislation that's also come out, in where you can actually say that someone is actually bilingual. They're graduating with that second language.
Seal of biliteracy.
Seal of biliteracy. So it's very exciting, but we didn't feel that we wanted to adjust them right now without giving you that presentation from Lizette and giving you all of that information, allowing you to ask thoughtful questions.
So we've finished goal 1. So does anyone have any questions or comments for Dr. Crane? Sherry?
Okay. You just said a lot.
It always is a lot for goal 1.
Yeah.
I can see that you've been very busy this summer. Okay, so I actually just have one comment on an item that I'm not sure should be there, and then 2 others that I'd want to possibly encourage you to add. But the first one is under 2C in looking at the school start times. And I understand why you've listed that there, and I understand why you're looking at that, because there is a lot of forthcoming research, and there are some area schools looking at this and changing. I guess I'm just wondering if it needs to be so explicitly as included in our goals, because I just want to be careful about raising expectation or raising, how we're communicating that's exactly what we're doing. I think in the spirit of continuous improvement, you're always looking at a lot of different processes and areas of the school, and you're always looking outside in at, new research, and, you're always comparing with your DERG peers and best practices, and not all of that is here, I'm sure.
Right.
And so I'm just kind of wondering aloud if we need to have that here, and what that will do in terms of expectation of what's to be accomplished during this particular school year. I guess it's,
Yeah, you're raising a very important point, which is we do have to manage expectations around any systemic change,
Right.
right? So by having it here, we don't know, that it could take multiple years.
Right.
The research alone could take a significant period
Right.
of time. The ultimate recommendation can be to keep things the way they are.
Right.
But that expectation, the timeliness piece is important. There are some of the things here, as you'll see, that haven't changed, because when we put them on the list of goals and objectives, it takes more than a year. So if we said for a possible change in 18-19, I think that would be a bad decision, right? So there are ways that we could adjust the language and make it, research. And if we're ready to make a recommendation, great. But if we're not, that's okay. If you're interested in something like that. I think as this group gets together and begins to talk and think about it, managing external expectations is going to be a big part of the challenge. There's a lot to learn about this. And as you think about the complexity of a school system, you talk about internal and external. There are all of the things internally that are part of it, including all of your bus routes and the times for pickups and the length of the routes and the number of buses that you have, and to and from school, and that's a part of it. But there's also and other internal things, but there are also external things, such as connections with other schools. So when you talk about athletics or visual and performing arts or other things that our students might be involved with, there can be an impact on there too. Quick, for instance, is that over in Greenwich, students will, if they have to travel past a certain distance, will be pulled out early from their classes in order to compete or participate in other things. That's a decision that they made in their community that they felt was the right one. I don't know if it is or isn't. We'd have to research around it. But there are also other parts to it, such as after-school activities and before-school daycares, after-school daycares, the things at the Y, things that, when you start to sort of unpack the entire system that's grown up around the school day, you learn how complex the discussion and the decision truly is. So, it'll take some time.
right. Well, I guess to your point, I think it would be smart maybe to modify the wording at least to say, research this area, but maybe to take out the make recommendations, because I think we've all acknowledged this could be multi-year. It's a very complicated area. Okay.
Thoughts?
I would agree with Sherry's comment, because the title of this is the 17-18 goals. If we don't make a recommendation by the end of this year, and you're still studying, and with the explicit knowledge that this research will be conducted with parents and members of the community and members of the board and everything else, I think to put the onus that you have to make a recommendation at the end of the year because or you didn't fulfill your goal, I think is not I agree with Sherry. I think I'm fine with leaving it in and saying that we are in the process of researching it. I don't know. Penny?
Having volunteered to be on this committee, I guess I don't know how it's going to go. We're just starting our work. We may research all year long and think we have to continue to research. We may research and then determine relatively quickly that we want to make a recommendation. So I'd like to leave it open-ended so that we haven't exceeded sort of the scope of what we're doing, and also so that the community knows it's going on. You could soften the word you could say make recommendation, if appropriate, or put some, I can't think of the right language, soften it a little bit.
It
but I
could
think
be
you wanna-
research and report to board, something along
Research and
those
report,
lines.
something like that would be good. I mean, I think
Research and
we-
report on?
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's fine.
Yeah, because then it's, if the report's at the recommendation phase, great. If the report's an update on where we are and a timetable, that's okay too.
Okay,
Does that work for everybody?
I think that sounds,
That's great.
Okay.
And then,
Sherry?
can I continue?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, and then my other one is, I would like to request that on 6, that we add, if we're opening this discussion and looking at like the elementary report cards, habits of success, I would also like to request that we formally look at the SACS science standard-based grading. I think we've had a lot of discussion about the appropriateness of that grading system. I think we moved to a grading system under, one pretense that possibly high schools and colleges would be moving there, and that hasn't happened. I think there's always been a lot of question about the effectiveness of that grading system. So I would just like to request that we prioritize that.
I would wholeheartedly support that. I have a rising senior who was the first year of that program in, what is it, 6th grade? Did that start in 6th grade? So he was the first year. So we've had quite a few years of study. So I would,
So
I would agree.
Would it be possible to maybe tuck that in under objective number 3 where science is listed? I don't know that the standard-based grading would fit under that response to intervention, but it may fit as we're looking at all of the
Yeah.
science curriculum in 5th through 8th grade, or really 6th through 8th grade, is really taking a close look at where that standard-based grading would fit in as we're moving forward with the changes in assessment and changing in curriculum.
I think it's great.
Is that, okay. And we can come up with some wording for that.
Sure.
Okay, and then my last one was, I know that the district is doing a lot of work around integrating the social emotional intelligence across district, across curriculum, but I don't see that reflected anywhere here.
That actually sits in a different goal.
It does, okay.
So as you move into
Oh,
goal number 4.
Okay, then we can, perfect, thank you. Okay, thank you.
okay, great, thanks. Anyone else? Any other questions, comments?
yeah.
Yes, Penny.
I know we don't have Lizette's, this is goal 7 on world languages. I know we don't have Lizette's report yet, but I kind of think that these goals do set standards for the year. And I'm wondering if we couldn't, somebody talk to her, we couldn't tweak them a little bit to advance this and still leave flexibility for the board, rather than, if she thinks this is appropriate for next year, if there are things that she wants to do that we as a board should consider in advance of her report. Just be very interested in what she had to say, with you talking to her and
Sure.
reporting back to us.
We had a brief dialogue, but she was in transition of getting her daughter back to Clemson.
Right.
So we will definitely have a more in-depth
Well, we're not
dialogue
gonna-
before we come to the next board meeting.
Right. We're not going to vote on these tonight.
But I completely understand. So,
Yeah,
yes.
no, that'd be-
Okay. If there are no other questions on goal 1 or comments, anyone else? I don't want to rush it, but, okay. Why don't we move on to goal 2?
Sure, love to. So our goal 2 is a communications goal about improve achievement, service, and relationships through communication that's responsive, clear, timely, and inclusive. So last year it was to develop and implement. This year it's to continue the implementation of our comprehensive district communications plan. Provide professional learning for BOE members and administrators related to student emotional well-being and its impact on student success. We have another speaker coming in this year in the fall to speak, thanks to the great cooperation with the PTC, PFA. focused on this in this area. And you'll see that this is, as Sherry mentioned, sort of a thread that runs through the goals. And we'll look at it again in Goal 4. Continue using the webpage to communicate curriculum to all stakeholders. This was an initiative that Jill and the Curriculum Leadership Council began very purposefully last year and did a wonderful job, and they're going to continue using our website to showcase our curriculum and as a resource for parents in the community to go to learn more about what we're doing. Communication plans related to recent legislation. And then the 5th is a new one. It's researching and implementing innovative practices in school district communications. We've got lots of ideas, and I've been able to sort of connect with people from all around the country and learn from some of their practices and how they're communicating as a school district. And I think there's some really great ideas out there. So with the help of our director, our communications coordinator, we are going to be working on some new and innovative things and ways to get our message out there. Because it certainly is a great story, a great message, wonderful people doing amazing work, and we want to make sure we can communicate that out, and we also want to be sure that we can find ways for people to communicate in with us. So we're looking at sort of different ways to do that as well.
Goal number 3 is to promote and support innovative and exemplary research-based professional practices in order to continuously enhance teaching and extend learning. So within this, you'll see the professional opportunities that we continue to provide for administrators and other leaders to help improve them in their coaching. And certainly as we continue to do that, you start to see many of our teachers moving into leadership positions and taking on administrative positions. So, as
Slow it down a little, would you? Yeah.
so we're doing our best, but really we get a lot of gains from working with our Curriculum Leadership Council and other key instructional leaders within this district on coaching teachers and really providing that hands-on professional learning right in the classroom, helping them to differentiate and unpack the curriculum, and they really do a great job with training our teachers and helping them to improve in their practices. One of the areas that we're going to be looking at this year, and we began late spring, was really diving into those tech integrators and the librarians. And certainly as they have those flexible schedules, more so in the middle school and the high school, but certainly there is a little bit of flex time in the elementary level. It's really looking at what their coaching capacity is and how do they help to move teachers forward using the devices and using all the new technologies that are within their classroom, and really to give them that understanding of how do they coach teachers and how do they bring them along and move them into that transformation of learning. So they really need a deep understanding of the curriculum and the content, and then they need to have that understanding of how to utilize the technology, and then it's really working with those teachers to bring them to the next level. And so that's an area this year that we're going to be focusing on and working with that group as well as the other groups that we continue to work with as well. I think what's also important here is number 3. We will be having a tri-state visit, and we will be giving an update to the board in the fall about the tri-state visit, but we are part of the consortium. And so it's really where high-achieving districts come together and they raise a question, and they have people from other districts that come that are from similar districts to help answer your question. So they'll look at evidence that we provide of student work, of curriculum documents. They'll go in and out of classrooms and do observations. They'll interview different stakeholders, board members, parents, students. They'll shadow students. And so we're really looking at cognitive engagement and rigor and relevance in learning, and that's our question that we've created. And so they will be coming in November, and it's more of a consultancy model. We're not going into a full-blown tri-state visit, but the consultancy really hones in on a specific question that we want answered, and we feel that this is an area that we've really been focusing in on, and it certainly relates back to the work that we've been doing with our TEPL document, with our effective teaching framework. It sits in many of the categories within our effective teaching framework, and we've spent time training teachers, and now it's really taking a look at how well have they implemented their questioning and their feedback to students and their performance-based assessments and all that higher level thinking that they're trying to gain. So we're looking forward to having them come into our district and provide us with a report at the end to let us know how we're doing in this area and offer some ideas and suggestions. And sometimes we get some of the best ideas and suggestions from this group that comes in. It's really, years ago, it helped us to create our definition for differentiation of instruction. It helped us to improve some of our science practices. So it really is thoughtful, and we're looking forward to having them come. But we thought that was important because it is going to be it was a big part of the work that we started in the springtime, continued during the summer, and certainly will continue into the fall.
Jill, I just want to stop and since we're at the end of this goal 3, and just say that I'm really impressed with the question that you're putting to Tri-State. I mean, talk about like at the core of what you're doing as educators. I mean, it's really impressive, and the fact that you're relooking at something that was created within this document and saying, hey, or within this district and saying, hey, I'm. Thank you. You're welcome. I mean, that's when I heard that. I was like, "Wow!" Thank you very much.
So, and it is for all students, and we'll be looking at
Yep.
all different
So they will
areas.
be going K through 12.
It's K-12 visit. So we're in the process of creating a website with all of our evidence and supporting documents. We'll give them a nice welcome and presentation on the day that they arrive, and then they pretty much dive into their work. And they will be traveling to all the different buildings. They'll be sitting in classrooms. They'll be shadowing students. They'll be interviewing students. They'll probably be interviewing some board members. They'll be interviewing parents. They'll be interviewing cabinet and administrators. So at the end, we get to actually fishbowl with them, and we hear them have dialogue, and then we're able to answer some questions and give them some feedback. So it will be interesting to see what they find.
And you're right to point that out, Deanna, so thank you for doing that. And that is thanks to Jill and thanks to the Curriculum Leadership Council and the building principals administrators who really came together to say, we're investing so many resources, so much of our time and energy into this. What is a question we can ask with worthwhile results, and it's really, you're right, it's going to the heart of the work, right? These people, whoever sign up for this group, they're going to work hard because we want them to, because this is an opportunity for us to learn about ourselves through the eyes of sort of our critical friends as they come in to visit, and they're bringing their own experiences to us, and then together as a team, they'll provide us with feedback to help us to improve. But it's really to Jill's credit and to that Curriculum Leadership Council who really sort of built this together as a meaningful experience for our district.
Well, thank you.
Oh, Penny. Sorry.
So I have really more of a language change, because I think you have a lot of goals already for this year. But in terms of goal 3, objective 1, the word implement
Yes.
really seems sort of dated to me now. We've had this for a
Yep.
long time, and so I thought I would like your reflection on how, but it's really more that we're using and leveraging, refining the professional evaluation learning program rather than implementing it. So
Great recommendation.
whatever you add, verb you think is best there.
Great, thank you. Great suggestion.
Anyone else? Okay, can we move to goal 4?
So goal number 4 is our school climate goal. See, we have little monikers for each one. To promote an environment that fosters respect, ethical behavior, and responsible global citizenship. So objective 1 is to revise and implement school and district climate plans system-wide. Is the same, which is to continue to use the K-12 SAPL, social, academic, and personal learning framework to guide and support responsive teaching, school services, school climate and safety initiatives. A new one is to develop and begin implementation of a K-12 school and district climate plan based on research and best practices. Now that's one to think about a little bit, Sherry, that you may want to consider becoming more specific. We have been doing quite a bit of work around emotional intelligence, and that will be sort of an anchor of our work, I believe, going into the new year. C is providing professional learning opportunities and research-based interventions, prevention, reporting protocols. D is to continue to expand and develop the school climate initiatives that we have underway. E is to conduct parent community education sessions on school climate. We're also including in this the health and wellness work because there is a very natural connection between the school climate work that we're talking about doing and our health and wellness curriculum revision and that program's work. That connection is something we want to make very explicit for folks because it is through our health program and health and wellness program K-12 that we'll be doing work around emotional intelligence, good decision-making, things like that. So there is a very natural connection there, and we feel that that connection is important for us to highlight and make explicit for our parents in the community. Let's see. I mentioned before, we have a speaker coming. Dr. Robert Brooks is coming in November to talk about a bit about student stress and student wellness and student decision-making. He's very well received in some other communities that we looked at. And then Objective 2, and the subs under that, are about school safety. And the very last one is a new one. We found out just a few days ago that the state is going forward with a Phase 3 school security reimbursement grant initiative. So I've spoken with Mike Handler, we will be developing a proposal for that and submitting it to the state. Now, they did say that they would give priority to districts that have not received grant money in the past, in the first 2 phases, and that they'd also give priority to districts that have the most need, a financial need as a town. Both of those could work against us in receiving this grant, but however, I do think it's our responsibility to put something together and put it forward to continue this work for our schools. So I've spoken with Mike, as I mentioned. I've also spoken with Joanne Rocco, who's the chair of our Crisis Advisory Board here, and we'll be sitting together and developing this proposal, getting it out in the next few months. And that is our school climate.
Okay. Any questions? Sherry?
Well, I would just suggest that the wording and the 1B, that we be more explicit by saying social emotional intelligence, because to me, there's an individual skill component, and then there's a community component. And when we refer to climate, I think it tends to refer more to the community component. So I just think it would be helpful to be more explicit to say, we're working on the individual skill building.
Right, and that is a big piece of it, absolutely right, because it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to help all members, students, teachers, others, have the skills to respond appropriately when faced with certain stressful situations and things like that. So
Right.
it is, doing it purposefully means that you are building the skills, the knowledge and the skill set for people to be able to succeed in this area. So that makes good sense. Okay, I'll work with the language a little bit.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so goal 5.
Goal 5 is our stewardship goal, and that is to promote and practice good stewardship for all district resources. The objective 1, we had one around sort of looking at the budget process, but I also wanted to put in there and make it the first objective around to continue developing and presenting a thoughtful and clear budget request to the board, to the town bodies, and to the whole community. I think this is something we've done so well, and we put so much time and effort and thought into how can we continuously improve in this as we're going forward. I think it's a worthy objective for us here, and something that I think we're on a great path, and I want to continue keeping our focus on doing that work. So number 2 is around maintaining and continuing to improve our budget process itself. It's about streamlining the meetings. A few years ago, we went to that joint meeting with the town council and the Board of Finance so that there's one large budget presentation and then follow-up meetings were more Q&A. I think that's been helpful. There could be other ways that we can find that would also be helpful in streamlining it and improving the clarity of the communication. And that's working in partnership with the town and First Selectman and the chair of the town council, chair of the Board of Finance, and others. We also, as we look at our enrollments, we look at our number of sections and classes, and as we've talked about before, we know that 29 sections in our elementary schools is sort of the ideal maximum number of sections. When we go above 29, we have to make some decisions around use of space a little bit and things. So looking at South, seeing that we're at 29, and at East we're at 28, and West we're a bit lower. by a couple of sections. I think it's a good time for our enrollment and facility study group to get together just for a meeting or two, take a look at the new projections when we get them back after October, take a look at our schools where we are, and just to give an update on sort of a long-range idea for our use of buildings. We can run at 30 sections if we must, but we do have to then, like I said, make some decisions around the use of our science classroom or other spaces. So it just, when we're at a good number, we're at the stable enrollment, as I've been saying, but I think it's time well spent for that group to get together for just, again, 1 or 2 meetings and then have something that we can present to the board. The other last thing here, and again, you can see the slight differences around including instead of beginning to and things. But the last one is number 4, and this is something that I feel is certainly important for me now as superintendent to continue my focus on, which is to advocate for the needs of New Canaan students in our school district, both, all locally, regionally, and statewide. By being active in statewide committees and also in being in communication with policymakers across the state. There's so much conversation now about the state budget and its impact on schools. As you may recall, we talked about some recommendations that came from some superintendent meetings with legislators this year around different ways, different mandate relief that they can provide to us that would be helpful. Some was acted upon, some was not. But I think that work, I know that work is very important for me to continue on behalf of our district. And not just me, but all members of our cabinet are involved in one way or another, both with statewide organizations, national organizations, learning from each other, and advocating for New Canaan and for the needs of New Canaan, and for, of course, the needs of all kids as we go through. I was asked just today about the state budget, and shared that I just think it's unconscionable that we're about to start school year and we still don't have a state budget in place for districts to know what kind of support that they will or will not provide to their kids. Those are important messages to get out, and for us here, I think we're in a good position to do that on behalf of our students and all of Connecticut students. So I wanted to add that in as one under stewardship of our resources.
Any comments or questions about Goal 5? Penny?
So I had a couple. Just on 3A, where it says the Enrollment and Capacity Committee is going to update and present a long-range plan. Well, it's really just an update, right?
It is
It's
really
not,
just update.
it suggests that we're doing, so I thought maybe you just might want to just say, update the long-range plan.
Right.
So- 'cause-
Right, unless we look at that and uncover a larger problem that we don't currently see.
Right.
It's really just an iterative thing to make sure that we're keeping an eye on things.
Yeah, because otherwise it might suggest there's some big project
Right.
that we're
no.
anticipating at the moment.
We are not.
All right, good. All right, then I was wondering if we could have something in here that said that we, as a district, would look for cost-effective energy savings. Because we do get asked about that. I got asked about it a lot on the Saks project. The things that we looked at weren't cost-effective, but
Okay.
I know the town is looking at some issues too. And I thought that should be worked into, I wasn't sure where, but worked into our goals.
Sure. And by that, do you mean all sources of energy, I would think, right? You were
Right.
talking about
I mean, I know
electricity,
there's a
but we're
group
also
that's-
talking about heating the buildings and that type of fuel. We're talking about the buses, we're talking about all of the ways that we use energy, fuel, what have you.
All the ways. I mean, we've actually done, if you look at our past budgets and you look at how our electricity usage has gone down, it's been tremendous over the years. So we've actually made a lot of very green, efforts. But I
And we're
just thought,
doing more this summer. And
yeah.
we plan to do more going into, I keep doing that, and going into next year as well, as you recall, with Eversource and those things. So, yeah.
right, so it's something we're looking at and doing. I just thought maybe we'll continue. I thought it should be reflected in our goals.
Absolutely.
And we're not, but they obviously have to make sense financially for the town.
Yep.
And then I actually think the goal 4 that you added is great. And I'm just wondering if we need to change the wording of the overall goal 5, because it's a little bit, either make it goal 6 or change the wording of goal 5 to encompass the concept of kind of advocating more for our students. I don't know if other people see that as a,
Well, in that vein, it could perhaps go into the communications goal, too, as an advocacy. mean, I saw it as resources and sort of, thinking in terms of, needs and resources and what have you. But if it went into a communications goal, it could fit. I like 5.
I like it in 5.
I don't want
it's a
6.
little bit more than, okay, I like 5 too. I like 5. Let's broaden 1.
It's a little thing, yeah.
I agree.
Would you rather broaden 5 or move it into 2?
I think moving it into the communications goal, number 2, I think is more appropriate. Because it's being informed and advocating and communicating.
Communications
As
and
appropriate.
maybe advocacy with,
Right.
And it can go beyond financial advocating,
Right.
so I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
so I think you might then want to just broaden this goal too, to include that concept, a little bit of advocacy with, the pertinent state bodies.
Yeah, we'll take a look. I think that's a very good idea. And I'm glad you like it, because I do think that's.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think
something
it's
that's
actually
very
something really important.
Good.
Any other comments or questions? So, as Dr. Lutzy mentioned earlier, this will be a first read if we, get a motion and a second. And if anyone over the next 2 weeks has any additional comments or questions, if you could forward them to both Dr. Lutzy and myself, then we will have, we'll try and incorporate that information out to the board in advance of the second read. Which
Right, we'll
is-
highlight anything that changes at that point.
Okay, so with that, if I could get a motion to approve the district goals for 2017-18 as a first read. Sherry, second. Penny? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the 2018 Board of Education meeting schedule. I'll do this the traditional way. If I could get a motion to approve the 2017-18 Board of Ed meeting schedule that you have in front of you as a first read. Jen, second. Hazel? All right.
So
Any,
just
yeah,
a couple of
comments?
very quick things on this, and you might be scratching your head as to why are we bringing this forward tonight. And we are, because as we begin a new school year, people are asking about the dates into 2018. As you know, the charter requires us to submit by the end of January our meeting dates, the board's meeting dates for that calendar year. But now that as we're about to begin a school year, it's helpful, I think, for folks to know when the board will be meeting. So we don't have to submit these to the town yet, but it would be, I thought we'd bring it forward for a first read so you take a look at the dates. We can have a second reading and a vote on it next meeting if they all work, and then at least people can plan forward. We've got some that come to the meetings. We've got our PTC, our PFA folks, other people, and it's helpful also as we look at our look ahead and the scheduling of presentations and things like that. The decision points around it, we've been pretty good at the first and third Mondays, wherever we could use them. Of course, where there are vacations in there, it can be a little tricky, but it worked out pretty well. We have the budget workshop again in December, following the same sort of pattern that we've used, and then there are 2 dates in the summer, one in July and one in August. Again, all of it's open for discussion. What I'd encourage you to do is take it home, take a look at your calendar, sort of take a look and match it up and see if you have any thoughts or changes or anything you'd like to see. And then we can bring it forward as a second read at our next board meeting. And certainly it's all open for discussion, but just a few folks have asked. I think it'd be helpful to be able to tell them the answers.
Penny?
So the only thing I'd ask from the administration is, I know that we don't know our summer plans yet. You might want to have 2 dates that the administration thinks would work in July, so that you could then, with the concept that we'll be polling the board and canceling one of them, just so that's a regular meeting.
Which is a better way
Yep.
to do it if
That's a
that's the
great
case.
idea.
That's true.
Yep, that's a great idea, Penny.
So I guess what we may do in that case, and I have to look at the calendar, because given the 4th of July holiday, perhaps we do the 16th and then maybe just a week later.
Yeah, the 23rd.
Right, and then this
We
way.
won't have both.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then it just could be
Yeah.
whatever makes the most sense. So good.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
great idea, Penny. Any other comments? Okay. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Second, Penny. All those in favor? Unanimous. All right. Comments from the public. I'm going to be a member of the public here for a second, and just, I'd like to make an announcement for anyone who hasn't seen the press out about the August 31st overdose awareness event at the pop-up park at 7 p.m. I think it's, given all the things that have been going on in the community, it's, I think, an important date for those of us involved in education. So,
Absolutely.
so that's that. And announcements and future business. Dr. Litzy.
Yep, just very briefly, as Gary mentioned, tomorrow morning, we have our new teacher orientation, initiation, or whatever you'd like to call it. Gary and his department worked very hard to pull all of that together. And another thing that I'm very proud of with this is that just about every presentation that they'll be going through over the next 3 days is led by one of our folks internally. We have our administrators, our teachers, our curriculum leaders, others who come into the room, they spend an hour or two with them around their area of expertise, and they show them and teach them about our district while modeling kind of our views and our hopes for them as they grow into community members here and leaders in our district. So all led by our own folks here, put together by Gary and his department. It's a great experience for people. Of course, we have convocation in 1 week. So that's when all of our staff come back. I know, 1 week. All of our staff come back, and we're in the cafeteria here. We have a wonderful sort of get together for a little bit, and a couple of us say a few words. So if any of the board members are available on that morning, you're certainly welcome to attend. We'd love to have you there. The following day is a professional learning day, so that Tuesday we'll be doing different things across the district. And then on Wednesday, our students are back. It's really amazing, right? I guess it's a sign of a great summer that it was over in a blink. But the energy is starting to build, and you can see it and you can feel it when you talk to parents, talk to kids, talk to our teachers and others. Today I had the great fortune to go to speak with about 35 aspiring administrators over at CES in Trumbull, and here they are in the summer. And then one of the questions that they asked me was, do you miss it? And I said, teaching, and one of them said, no, the summer, haha. And they meant teaching, and of course, we talked about that. But here they were, giving up a summer day to be there to learn, and we had 5 new Canaan teachers there in the room of the 35 from around the area, thinking about, again, leadership opportunities and growth. And there they were on that day, learning and growing together. Really great stuff. So anyway, the first day on that Wednesday, we're very excited for that. And of course, the new wing in Saks will be open for our students there as well, which we're very excited to see them as they go into it. We have some 8th grade classrooms that are there. We also have art classrooms that are there. So all students will be able to take advantage of the new renovation as they go through the school. We also have some STEM classrooms in there. So 8th grade gets many of the classrooms, but everybody gets to enjoy some of it. And I want to thank Penny for her great work as chair, seeing this through the entire summer. I think maybe that's why your summer went so short, because you were working the whole time. And Jim Bell, of course, and the entire committee for getting us here. So we're excited to open that up. And you'll see some great improvements around our buildings. You look here even in the Wagner room. We've replaced the carpet. I'm thinking that you've noticed. But the
It's
red
just so-
stained carpet.
It's so memorable, familiar. That's the word.
Wait, and the library has a similar thing. So we like this carpet, and it's worked very well. And I think, again, you'll see in the main offices down in the elementary schools, they've done some great work. We've got new playground going in over at Saks. That'll be done early in September for all of our students to enjoy and beyond. So we've really done some great work. And I want to just, while I have the mic, and I'm going to be done in a moment, I promise, but I want to thank certainly all members of the cabinet for the great work that they've done throughout the summer. I want to thank certainly Dan Clark and John Perna, who've really shepherded over 70 projects through, and they're in some stage of completion or work as we go through the summer here. Certainly all of our principals and the work that they've done, all of our administrators, the custodians, the work that they've done, our secretaries. I mean, it really, it takes everyone getting involved and doing their work in order for us to be where we are today as we prepare to open our buildings in just over a week. It's exciting. Exciting to see it all come together. And that was another question they asked me today. What do you enjoy about your job? And one of my responses, and there were many of them, was seeing everybody's work sort of contributing to the whole and building that system that you then can be so proud of. And we have a lot to be proud of here in New Canaan, thanks to everybody's good work over the summer. So excited about that. We will be meeting again on Tuesday after Labor Day. We'll be receiving our opening of school reports from each of our building principals, which is a tradition that we have here. We'll have an end-of-year budget report from Joanne. Her department has been working diligently these last few weeks, as always, but to put together the ED001 report and everything that it takes around those unaudited financials. Then a second read of our schedule and a second read of our district goals. So a lot to look forward to in the next couple of weeks, and it's good to be back.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. And with that, if I could get a motion to adjourn. Nobody wants to adjourn.
That's good.
Hazel. Sherry. Second. All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.